Hi, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's session. We're going to be talking with some fantastic people from the National Youth Science Forum, and we're going to be talking about what works with STEM careers and how do we widen our definition of what smart looks like. So, my name is Lucy, and I'm from Study Work Grow, and I'm so glad to be here with you all today. Before we do get started, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where I'm coming to you from. I'm in Cairns, which is the home of the Giveaway Wheller Digi people, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and future. So today we're joined by some fantastic people from the National Youth Science Forum. We're joined by Dr. Melanie Bagg, and she's going to be talking about how we can widen what we think about when we talk about what smart means, particularly in relation to STEM careers. She's going to present for about 15-20 minutes, but there is plenty of time for questions at the end. So if you do have some questions you'd like to pose, you can put them in the comments at any time. And we're also going to be sharing the links through to the National Youth Science Forum at the end. So thank you so much for joining us, Melanie.
Thank you very much for having me. So good afternoon, everybody, and happy National Careers Week. I'm really delighted to be here today. I too would like to begin by acknowledging the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of the land from which I'm joining you on tonight in beautiful Canberra, ACT. I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us here tonight. And I look forward to hearing in the chat whose lands you are joining us from tonight. So I was really delighted to be asked to speak today, and thank you, Lucy, for inviting me. I'm here today to talk about the huge diversity of people who actually suit careers in science, technology, engineering, and maths, and even broader than that. And particularly why we need them, why we need such diverse people. So educators, which many of you are key to guiding and supporting young people in finding their future. But when it comes to STEM careers, it can be really tricky if you don't have that sort of background and you don't necessarily know a lot about it. There are a lot of jobs and there's a massive range of different types of things, from technical sort of jobs right through to research and development and everything in between. So it's hard to give advice, and it changes very quickly too. So there's a lot out there in industry and also in some very applied areas that lots of people aren't really aware of, and also many jobs that are adjacent to STEM. So that is your science communicators, many of the people in applied work as well that we would also consider to be in science and technology. One of the common things I hear is that the smartest kids are what's required to study science and technology. Look, we really see that as a myth at National Youth Science Forum. Yes, while some of them do, there are so many different types of both student and later on STEM professional who is just perfect for a science and technology style role. So why do we often consider the smart kid for STEM or science and tech, but not others? And why do we label it that way? I'd like to introduce today the term intersectionality. And if you can comment on chat whether you've heard of intersectionality before or not. In its most basic form, intersectionality refers to a lot of things being in play at the one time. And in science and technology, we often see that this can be a challenge and a barrier to people actually getting involved in science and technology study, training, and their careers and future roles. And often for one person, it can be much more than one factor at play. You know, there's prejudice, there's bias, and there's just simple ignorance that needs to overcome in many areas. So I like to just take me as a living example of this, because I can talk about myself and my own experience. As I started my journey towards being a medical research scientist and a science communicator, and now the CEO at a national STEM education organisation, I want to point out that I was also a country kid from very much rural South Australia, a town with only 900 people. I was also the first person in my family to go to university out of the whole extended family. And I had, and I still do have, an extremely severe health condition that was at a time then when ignorance and prejudice against a condition meant that a lot of the effects of essential medication were rife because they were affecting sometimes my ability to do things. I was also really diverse in the sense that I was different from other students around me in my area, in my town. I loved piano and the performing arts, and I wasn't what they call the typical student who loves science. And in fact, I was not encouraged at school and immediately put into subjects that weren't anything to do with science and technology. Luckily for me, someone found me along the way and got me involved in, a science awards, which I thought I was really going in because I loved writing. But that actually helped me find science and technology and understand that there's a huge, big world of different things that I could do and that everybody had a role to play in that. So I had challenges in terms of succeeding in my chosen vocation. And it was really based on the inherent bias of others around me. And we all have inherent bias. There's not one of us who could stand here, I do, you do, we all do. But I guess the thing that I've really started to understand since working in my role and helping other people enter science and technology careers is we've really got to check those bias, and we have to really try and promote students to find all sorts of possibilities that are out there for them, even if we're not really sure of what they are. So there's so much more that people can face. I'm just an example, but if you add being a person of colour, being LGBTIQA+, or growing up as a First Nations person, coming here as a refugee, being disabled, being neurodiverse, the point I really want to make is the diversity just takes so many different forms. And guess what? The more diverse, the more likely that that person has a lot to offer science and technology. The evidence is really overwhelming that if you get lots of different people who think differently, come from different backgrounds, get them together, that's when you get the very best discoveries, the very best results that no one else has quite been able to crack. And we come up with some of the best things. And some of these are deeply technological, others are quite simple, but it just needs somebody to look at it in a different sort of way. So really that diversity of thought that is fundamental to anything in science and technology is only going to be reached if we have a diversity of different people, in those teams and working together to get to those goals. So to really reach that equality and diversity piece, we all need to check our bias and advocate for the inclusion of all. So I just want to reflect on a few things as, myths or things that I hear people say. Do you have to be super smart, top of the class to study, work in science and technology? In my case, it was actually getting a PhD in that area, and that is not true. We do have some of them, sure, but many people are hard workers, think differently, and can really add to the area. I've had a few thoughts really based on all my observations and learnings myself, and these are, non-exhausting, but I believe they're going to really help us encourage more people who are underrepresented across all the areas of science and technology to be included. So reflecting on this, it's busting that you have to be a genius or you have to be a top student myth. The whole Einstein and, when we think of a top scientist, that is such a small percentage of the people who work in all areas of science and technology. I also want to acknowledge that science and technology is just so much broader than school subjects, something that happens. We have all of these students come to school saying, come to NYSF saying, well, it's chemistry, physics, biology, maths. It's very hard for people in an education and school setting necessarily to see what all the different jobs are really like, and especially jobs in industry. We not that long ago had a whole bunch of people who'd come to the NYSF Year 12 program, get to go to the Avalon Air Show and actually see all the science and technology behind, how you create and run an F-35, how you make them work in the right way, and all of the other support parts that go into, whether it's aviation or whether it's the work that is going on in space. And there's a huge amount in that area now. And the amount of different people that are needed, you've got the people who are coming from uni background, but you've also got people who are highly technical and know how to, build that advanced manufacturing and really problem solve those things that other people can't resolve. So it is really important to understand that school is really only the start of it. It's sort of the foundation of the things you need to then really grow into a science and technology career. And the other thing, I really just wanted to comment too is that desire to encourage all people, no matter what their background is in life and what they do, even if they don't think that they have a science kind of background or a science, kind of impact in their lives. Having access to verified evidence-based scientific information is important for everybody for their day-to-day decisions. And I guess we've probably not seen anything as important as what happened during COVID, and having really good chief medical officers who could very clearly present to us what was evidence-based and what wasn't in those areas, in those states where that was happening and happening well. The communication plus that evidence base, it really, demonstrates how it can be relevant to us all, and we should have access to that whether we're scientists or not. So I think the key thing I want to say before I go on to NYSF and what we do is, for all of us, let's not categorize a person. Let's not prejudge that person, because the person we think is not going to be fantastic at science and technology could well be the person who comes up with that next amazing invention. So how can you help? You can help by recommending young people actually promote the initiatives that help them learn about the real life job opportunities and the pathways that they can actually follow in science and technology. And that is what we do at the National Youth Science Forum, the NYSF. Now, I'm not going to go into great depth here, but it's about what we do. That is, we constantly trying to inspire and connect young Australians with the broad science and technology, areas of interest, study, training and career. We want to help secure and expand the science and technology workforce in Australia, because it's really critical for a lot of these areas that we actually have people who have Australian citizenship and can work in Australia on some very sensitive areas. We also, aim to always have a very immersive experience. So people meet like-minded peers who are more like them. So, reflecting again on me, I was the only one in the whole district I came from who would have been slightly interested in science and technology. At organisations and programs like NYSF, you meet lots of other people who are interested in similar things to you. You find your tribe. And that really is very empowering to help you understand, where you can go in the future, and that there are people like you out there. The other thing that's key is that diversity piece, and I guess that's been the key focus for me tonight, is that diversity, equality and inclusion. We strive to make sure that we are, making sure that everyone's experience and their brains, and they all are adding to these future problems and helping solve the problems the world is facing and will continue to face as we go on in time. And I won't dwell on these, but safety, health and wellbeing is critical to the NYSF, and making sure that everybody is safe, happy and having a great time while they're on anything that we do. So we've got quite a few different programs, but the one I want to talk about today, because I think it's really relevant, is our 2024 NYSF Year 12 program. The Year 12 program is our flagship program, and it's designed to give students that really broad understanding of what sort of study career options that they can pursue in science, technology, engineering, maths, and so much more. It's to encourage them to either study or train or go on to have jobs in those areas. And one of the most important things is they not only get to see real science and tech facilities, and especially ones that you never get to see unless you have this sort of experience, but also meet real people who have actually gone into all different things and actually ask them questions. What's life like in industry? What's life like if you're doing something at a university? What's life like if you've gone through that technical training pathway? So there's so many different people and so many different pathways that we help showcase. And we run it in 2 summer sessions, which are live in. So it gives that really immersive feeling that, students get just STEM 24/7 and people who like science and technology 24/7. So they're the dates, and we'd really love to encourage as many people who are now in year 11 to apply so that they get this great opportunity going into year 12. And what we hear back is often that really takes a lot of pressure off. Everyone's worried about ATARs and achieving the very, very best. That is important to an extent, but if you go into year 12 feeling confident, happy, and know that you've got a number of different options, and that science pathways usually are not a linear, direct line, often it's twists and turns, then it can really empower students as they're going into not just year 12, but the rest of their life. So I just want to finish off by saying STEM is everywhere and STEM is for everyone, and that's really what we live by and do at the NYSF. And if you do want to come to this program and you need some help with funding for either your accommodation or getting to the program, local Rotary clubs all around the country are often happy to help sponsor students directly, and we also have access and equity scholarships. So that's another thing to keep in mind. We really want to encourage as diverse and interesting people from all different backgrounds to come and join us at NYSF.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Melanie. It was so good to hear your overview. I'm just going to share the link now so that Catherine shared the link so that if people are interested, they can go and find out specifically about that Year 12 program. I have a couple of questions. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat now. I'm going to monitor them, but I'm going to get to go first because I'm the one in control. So my first question was, thank you so much for that great overview. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, so I didn't go through NYSF. I did it at the Young Engineering Summer School when I was in year 10. So I have some idea, but for somebody who has no idea of what kinds of day-to-day activities young people are doing while they're at the Year 12 program, can you just kind of go through a couple of them for us, please?
Yeah, sure. So we do a lot of visits to either, it can be something like a lab visit, it can be a visit to an actual facility, like an industry facility, for example, CSL, or going in there and looking at where vaccines are both engineered as well as formulated and things like that. We also do field trips to, have a look at environmental science, often being actively involved in something like environmental water quality monitoring. There's definitely an agricultural aspect to what we do. We often go and look at a lot of the crop growth and ag work that's done at CSIRO. A lot of hands-on, sort of getting the chance to not only get into the facility, but actually have a go at these things and have a try. We also get a number of great keynote speakers. There's been opportunities in the last few years to meet Nobel Prize winners, not just one, but about 4 of them. But there's also people who are just a little bit further ahead than a lot of the people who come to NYSF, and they're our student staff volunteer advisors. And so they are with our students the whole way through the program. And so it's really fantastic to be able to ask someone who's just a little further ahead than you are, and also some of the people at the different places we go to visit. But the other part that's really important is that peer side of things, and that social networking and getting that confidence to meet people you don't know, and to understand a little bit more about how to walk up and chat to a professor in something, or somebody who's working in science in the field. And so by the end of it, we find the confidence of everybody at NYSF's really grown, and that ability to sort of hit the ground running with a community that's there for them. So it's fun, but it's also a really deep look at what you can really do in all the science and tech areas.
It sounds absolutely amazing. I wish that I'd done something like that.
Well, I'm excited too. So, going and working for us is the other one. So I go over here now.
My other question, while I've got you as an expert in sort of this careers space in terms of STEM, I often talk about the things that make you suited for different career paths, the sort of personal qualities or the strengths, the skills that people might bring. Do you see anything common amongst people who really enjoy and excel in STEM careers? Is there anything you can kind of pinpoint for us?
Yeah, so I guess one of the things I like to refer to is a thing called transferable skills. And so science and technology is all about problem solving, and often thinking about what the problem is and what you think the solution might be, but then how you plan to get to find out whether that really is the solution or not. Noting that if you're wrong and that isn't the solution, it's still okay, because that's the whole scientific process. It's actually getting there. And so what we find is when people have, done, all different types of scientific training or scientific study or worked in different jobs, they can often have these really transferable skills to other areas. So take me, for example, although I had spent many years doing sort of IVF and cloning technology in my PhD and my other studies, I was always really interested in writing. I loved talking at conferences and doing that sort of thing. So when I decided I'd like to try science communication and share information about science more broadly, a lot of the skills I had from my science work were very transferable to, eventually managing a team, managing resources, looking at problems. We had a few things we were like, how do we help people understand what quantum is? How do we help people understand, something that's, quite difficult in the news, for example? And so those initial skills I got training as a scientist, working out what the problem is and how we work out whether, the predicted solution is right or not, the hypothesis. It kind of stands you in good stead. The other thing about most people who've been involved in any sort of science and technology, I was saying before, it's not just the smartest, it's a lot of that hardworking, kind of really keeping at something, not giving up when it isn't quite the result that you want. And that's just so critical in nearly every field. We do see a lot of those transferable skills in things like mathematics, cyber, AI, etc. All the big banks are constantly looking out for people who are graduates in physics and maths. So if you can do great data or, visualize things with a computer for one reason, you can often end up being the perfect candidate for a completely different role. And that's a lot of what we do at NYSF, is helping people hear the stories of folks that they just would not have imagined where they started and where they are now.
Yeah. You mentioned a few of the more emerging, so cyber security, for example, a few of these kind of emerging technologies and emerging STEM roles. Is there anything that you think will be really important for people who are the young people, the year 11s and the year 12s right now, who are thinking about their future careers? Where do you think they could end up? Is there anything can you share those thoughts with us, please?
Yeah, so look, I think one of the most important things that everyone can do is actually have a look at the national priorities for Australia. I mean, you can also look if there's another area of the world, because science is very international. It's very easy to travel to other countries. And I actually spent a year and a half in Italy when I was doing my research, which was so hard, all that lovely food. And I was in Milan, so much fashion too. It was absolutely great. But so the thing in Australia is, I think, look at where the national priorities are, look at where they can see the need for workforce. And if you can, if it's an area that you're, that's your skills and that's your interest, just already kind of thinking about making sure you're set up for that pathway. And there's a lot of people on the way to help you with that, finding people who inspire you, finding somebody who can help you, think about, well, they managed to do that. How'd they get there? What sort of other skills did they need? And that can often really stand you in great stead. And look, Australia at the moment, cyber, quantum, but also there's a lot of, the climate sort of area and sustainability. So there really is something for everyone. And look, again, I don't want to dwell on COVID, but it does show the importance of having people who can work on immunology, people who can fast scale massive engineering solutions, whether that's something like face masks or making sure there's enough ventilators for people who are sick. Like, this is the sort of stuff that it won't go away. It will now and then, go quieter and come back. But, if you have a look at what the national priorities are, and they're available on government websites, and I'm sure you all feature them as well from time to time, there are a lot of really exciting areas. And I'd also say, if one thing isn't really your cup of tea, there's always something that is. So I think, spending some time to look at that, you can often find the right fit.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. I feel like I've learned a lot about the NYSF, but also about the careers in STEM. So thank you so much for your time this afternoon and for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say to everyone, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. If you have any more questions for Melanie, you feel free to send them over. You can reach us on all of our channels, put them in the comments underneath these videos, and we'll also be sharing this via email to anyone who missed a session later on. So thank you so much for coming along today, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.